Do you hear that? That's the sound of SpongeBob, episode 2, Tea at the Treehouse, being played throughout history. You know, setting a stake in the long run that SpongeBob would have come to have and still go on to have. Season 15, it's getting renewed for another season, so SpongeBob ain't over yet. SpongeBob ain't over yet. I think there's a lot of things to talk about in this episode. The introduction of Sandy being the main one, the mammal under the sea, and also the introduction of karate for SpongeBob being his main hobby. Probably not his favorite thing, but definitely his main hobby. I would say is probably the karate. And what I find is weird. He was jellyfish hunting while he met Sandy, so kind of two. Like those are his two hobbies. I would say is probably the karate and the jellyfish hunting. I think are probably at least the earlier seasons. So that's kind of what SpongeBob establishes that is his things he does for fun. What else to talk about? I'm looking at my notes here. Oh, he brings when Sandy is introduced to SpongeBob, she invites him over to the treehouse to have tea, some Texas tea, which I guess is just sweet tea, but they call it Texas tea. I don't know if that's something they did in '99, but some Texas tea. And when SpongeBob came over to the Treedome, he brought flowers, which I think would be an interesting thing if originally SpongeBob was supposed to have a love interest in Sandy, rather than the eventual, you know, second best friend that she probably is to SpongeBob. I don't think Squidward probably counts as the second best friend. It probably goes to Sandy. So I think that was a little interesting. If they weren't still hadn't decided what they really wanted to do with Sandy, if that would be the love interest or, which I think is kind of brought on with the flowers. But I think that's interesting. I think it's also interesting that the word polyurethane is in this episode. Probably the first time I had ever heard polyurethane as a 4-year-old or whatever when I watched this episode. They should like to show this episode a lot on Nickelodeon back in '08, that type of that general bit of time. Uh, Another point, I think there's a lot of different of the meme templates have come from this episode. The I need it and even the Patrick crawling one. That's a lot of stickers. I think I see of that one, and also I thought it was he had. There's one where he has a book and SpongeBob has the glasses on in this episode where I think it's another meme template. And I thought that one uh, came from the one when he was in the library, uh, but I guess it's from that one. So kind of three are like really big meme templates, iconic moments in the show, which I think is telling of how successful this show was going to be and like how that they've used these earlier episodes. How they've made so much impact on even today. Other notes, something you don't see a lot now in the newer SpongeBob is he likes to show when he's stressed by his eyes shrinking, and then therefore the line around his eye, the 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 outline gets like larger. So, and it doesn't really happen a lot in the newer episodes of SpongeBob, but I think it's interesting that animation style to make his eyes shrink to show that when he is stressed. And he was even doing it when he was lying. His eyes would shrink a little bit, and he had different degrees to the shrinkage, which I think is a kind of an interesting thing that they move away from. Which I guess it makes sense. You don't really need all that expression from a cartoon, but I think it's a real kind of showcases why it was so successful. The little details like that. And also, kind of the quietness, or rather the lack of dialogue that was in this episode. When you compare it to the newer ones, it's kind of, on two sides of the spectrum. Like, it's like the new episodes are really loud and kind of, they can be annoying at times. I don't know if that's just the age, Father Time getting me there if I think they're annoying because I didn't grow up on them. But they're really loud. They're screaming a lot, I feel like. Whereas there were a lot more sound effects in the earlier ones, like just random little sound effects, which I think I like that one. I like that version more. Maybe the screaming is better, but I like the more sound effects and kind of gentle dialogues rather than all the screaming and things like that. It's kind of like when people talk about Asta, which I don't mind Asta and Black Clover. They're like, he's so loud. Maybe that's just how entertainment is going. It's louder is better. And one final point before I give my rating, I think I want to talk about there being ice cubes. So when SpongeBob brought the flowers to Sandy, she brought out a vase, and she put the vase had ice cubes in the water that the flowers gone in. And I thought, that's not good for the flowers, right? There's no way just having them on ice is helping. Like you just need water. Like I feel like maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I don't know the science behind that, but in my mind, that's just gonna slow the water uptake down rather than maybe it preserves it. I don't know. But in my mind, it just doesn't make sense. In my mind, it's going to slow the uptake of water and kill it faster. But maybe that's not how it works. And I think Steven Hillenberg was an aqua. I don't know if he's a marine biologist, but I think he had some science with water before he did SpongeBob. But whatever, it doesn't matter. But I just thought that was weird. But this one, definitely a lot better. It was a lot longer than the first episode, which was kind of more of an introduction episode. I'm not sure what the exact time was. I didn't write that one down. But it's closer to 10 minutes rather compared to like the 3-minute first episode. But I think I'm going to give this a 7, somewhere in the upper 7s. 7, 8. I think 7, 8 is probably good. I mean, I like the episode, but I think it's just lacking. It's lacking the Krusty Krab, I think. I think you have to have Squidward and the Krusty Krab kind of be in there to get into those 8 and 9s. Sandy's treehouse really isn't a great setting, in my opinion. Oh, that's last thing. 7, 8. Last thing that I want to mention was that it also introduces the system that SpongeBob and Patrick use to survive inside of the Treedome, which I think is cool. Kind of, it's like, SpongeBob's incredibly episodic, but introducing the story behind how they learn to wear the glass domes around their head filled with water is kind of interesting that it gets brought up even in the second episode. Because that goes on all the way to today, is that no longer has to be explained why they do that, But you know why they do it, but it doesn't, the past of what they experienced, Like they explained this problem in an episode that is affected. So in a way, it's non-episodic. But that was the last thing. Thanks for watching if you made it this far. Listen to me yap about some SpongeBob. But yeah, that was episode 2, Tea at the Treehouse.